So yeah, you guys all mentioned Bivvy, so I thought we'd start with this. This is specific to me, obviously. You just adjust it, and if you want it, I realized this is just a Word file. The backside was just is the exact same thing, but it didn't have the red, so I did it again with the red. So this is just me, and it's one that I keep changing year after year depending on the trip and where. I usually just add, I don't take away, but I make it so obviously some of the stuff is irrelevant, like ice axes and crampons. That was for a very specific trip, but I like having it on there just in case you got, it depends on what you're doing. So just move this around to fit what you need. I don't think that there's anything on here that it should have pretty much everything, but it's got, like mouth guard, I need a mouth guard at night to sleep. So obviously you don't need that if you don't have a mouth guard. But anyway, so I didn't tailor this to you. This is my literal list that I use. I've got a different one for racing, like if I'm going off to a comp. If any of you guys want this or that, just email me and I'll just send it to you, and then you can start fresh so you don't have to just enter this into a computer or something. But some things I just thought I'd go through briefly. So if it's in black, to me, it's pretty important. Things like repair kit, wing, harness, helmet. That's all good. GoPro camera package and mounts. That's obviously not important, but it's in black for me because I always need that stuff if I'm filming or something. Dromedary, I've got it in red because typically you'd need a dromedary for water, but I've got it in red because sometimes. I'm in in Alaska, we didn't actually need it. There was plenty of water, so we started off with it, and like a water bag, something to carry extra water. Yeah. Somebody was asking me about that today. In my experience, and this is this constantly evolves, but I find it really hard to carry more than 5 days of food and 2 days of water. The water is really our Achilles heel. If you're going by what you should drink every day, especially if you start getting up to launch and that kind of thing. Hydration is so critical. It's way more important than food, but there's only so much water you can carry. Like when we do bivvies in the Sierras, if you fly down to the valley to get water, by the time you get back up, you're through a couple gallons just to get back up in the middle of the summer. So that's a lot more water you got to carry. So if you can have a little filter or something and filter it. In Alaska, I didn't need anything, just it was either melting snow or getting it up high enough that I wasn't worried about giardia and stuff like that. So, but also what kind of food, you need to kind of match. You need to match what you bring with what you're attempting to do, obviously. On the Rockies Traverse, because our whole style there was we were no forward progress unless we were in the air. Well, that meant we didn't hike that much. We had one big monster day. It was in the film, but other than that, we were just camped high all the time. So we didn't hike around that much. So you're kind of conserving calories. So, the dehydrated foods and the lightweight stuff for that kind of a trip works fine. For Alaska, I needed sausage and cheese and I needed stuff with real calories. A little dehydrated 400-calorie meal, that doesn't do it. So, you kind of have to adjust on that thing. I find it really nice to have really lightweight stuff sacks, that you can get at any kind of outdoor store for just separating things out. You get into bivvy, you can't just be putting everything into your bag, so your food can go in one and your repair kit and your first aid can go in another, and, you can kind of, those help you keep things organized, or maybe like a stuff sack. But usually, I don't find those very valuable because stuff sacks get everything too compact and then they're really hard to deal with in your pack. It's kind of nice you'll get a system down, but like in my Sup Air Delight harness, I take the pad out and the first thing goes in is the sleeping bag. So that gives me a really nice soft thing here, and then I can put my trekking sticks next to it on each side, and that creates like a little tent in there. And then I can go more soft stuff until I get to about there, and now I've protected myself pretty well. And then beyond that, I can put the stove and the fuel and that extra part, down there that you would typically put your dromedary. And that's what that space is for. But once you've sealed that off in there, most harnesses are the same, then you've got another big pocket, and that can be where your metal-y, your pot and your pan and your lighter and that kind of stuff, hard stuff. So it's not anywhere there. What else really important? Like I've got ground tarp in here in red. In Alaska, that came really handy. You can use that as a really quick shelter. You got a little rainstorm coming through or something. Rather than breaking out the tent, a little quick ground tarp that's just exactly the size of the bottom of your tent can be really handy. And if you're going like a single wall tent, really lightweight gear, where I fly, where it's always rocky and gnarly, it's kind of nice to have a little bit extra protection. So again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I don't need to, but just match where you're anticipating it going. You can radically change all this if you're in the Alps or here, or like maybe you don't even need a repair kit here. I can't imagine what would ever damage a wing, So you can kind of adjust around.
What tent do you take?
I use the Black Diamond Highlight, it's called. It's really lightweight. It's a single wall, but as you saw in the Alaska Traverse, it worked fine in the snow and the rain and all that kind of stuff. And it's big. So that's another thing. For a while, I was trying to do the whole bivvy, like a bivvy sack. And I don't dig that because you don't have any place to put your gear. So you've got to, if it's really dumping out, you're never going to get everything dry. Whereas at least in a tent, you can escape from the elements for a while and enjoy yourself and read. And that Black Diamond Highlight tent's really a two-man tent. And so it's got plenty of space. I can put my gear in there, and I can still lay comfortably. I can put my gear behind me and sit up. And Dave had that Big Bertha tent, which is a great little tent, but you can't even sit up in that. And there's almost negligible weight difference or size packing difference. So I really like that one. I like the one with the open. They have two versions of it. There's the side door that's really big, or there's the end door, and that's really small. The side door is much better if there's two people. But, well, either way, it's kind of much better. It's just nicer. But I find bivvies just claustrophobic, and you don't have any place to put your stuff. And it's kind of nice to get your stuff out of the way. Yeah, whole bunch of electronic stuff. Don't go bivvy without a DeLorme or a Spot for sure. Dop kit, that's all that's optional. You don't need to brush your teeth. I just like brushing my teeth. What else? Like things like passport. Ziplocs can be what they were on here for, was because we were doing the food caches. So that was just a really nice way to, if you're doing multiple days and maybe you got a ground support team, or maybe you've got your girlfriend that's going to, you're starting from the south and she's midway down the thing, then you can have everything nicely labeled in a Ziploc for them. This is day 4, or whatever. This is resupply if you're doing one resupply or kind of thing. So that's why that's on there. Sunblock's pretty obvious. Gaiters, those of you that saw the film, we forgot those. Kitchen, so this is another thing that's you can really adapt a lot of type of stuff. You can do, the type of cook kits that run on, like the jet fuel types, but you can't really cook in those pots. That's either for dehydrated. It's really just for heating up water. They're wicked efficient, but then you got this fuel can you got to deal with, and you can't use those to cook on fire. So if you're in a place that you can use fire to cook, then it's probably nicer to just go with a little titanium pot, super light, and you can make fire with. We had both. We were using those little pocket rockets and fuel, and the kind of pot that you could put on a fire or on that. So those little pocket rockets are tiny. They're they're a few ounces, but you got to carry the fuel. But they're still very efficient. They're not nearly as efficient as the jet fuel stoves, or that genre. There's many brands, but you can use those little pocket rockets. At least you've got something if it is raining or you can't get a fire going. I've got some stuff on here for like tricks for stuff to have for like making fire, like dryer lint. When you're doing your clothes, stuff works really well. Duct tape is like an inferno. If you put a bunch of duct tape in kind of like a little funnel shape and just light it up. It takes a little while, and then that stuff just, and so it's a great little, out in the backcountry secret to getting a fire going. So, you can have those sticks that work pretty good, the spark sticks. I have on here in red whiskey. That's not optional. What else?
Ground coffee is in black.
Yeah, I can't go without coffee. And again, suit this to suit the mission. You know, anybody can get away with a couple days of being miserable, but I don't like being miserable. It's not a race, you know, when you're bivvying. You're camping. It should be awesome. You should be eating great food and taking your time and have the stuff that makes you happy. You know, it's not a race. It's not the X Alps. It's a totally different kind of thing. And so, and I think you have to have what you need to sleep well. You can't fly if you're tired. So have the stuff that you need to sleep well, whether that's a big-ass thermarest pad. If you need that, then have it. You know, have a comfortable sleeping bag and take the food that you need to take. And it's just way more enjoyable. You know, it's not supposed to be like hardcore or punishing. It's supposed to be awesome. So take all that stuff. You know, John Sylvester, when he goes on his bivvy trips across the, you know, Indian Himalaya for a month, he takes a pair of underwear because he's in India. And everywhere you land, there's a little village and there's tons of people. And the first thing they're going to do is invite you in and serve you tea and give you stuff, you know. So it just totally depends on where you are, you know. Literally, that's what he brings, an extra pair of underwear. So, because you get sick in India, you know. So you gotta fit it to, fit the mission.